Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 162. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Monday, Steelers Nation. A pretty quiet weekend overall, but 2 weeks to go until training camp begins, and it won't be quiet once the team reports to Latrobe. So not a ton going on, although it does appear we have word of the Steelers' 2026 Aaron Rodgers trip. No throwing in Malibu this time. Looks like they were out countryside doing their best cowboy impression with Aaron Rodgers and company. So that's sort of the story of the day. A minor one, but one worth noting this time of year all the same. Dave, how you doing?
All right. Happy Monday. Happy, 2 weeks to go until the start of training camp here. And I think as of Sunday, let's see, 9 more Sundays until the Steelers open up their regular season against the Atlanta Falcons. So we're starting to count that down as well, too. And once again, I think as has been the case, I think the biggest story is really guys getting together and working. And that's the kind of off-season news or development that you certainly don't mind writing about. Looks like, who was it? Michael Pittman Jr., Ben Skoranek, Roman Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Mason Rudolph, DK Metcalf, and Pat Freiermuth all got together. I don't know. Some people are saying maybe that's out in Montana somewhere. Interesting to see them put the cowboy garb on, and it looks like there's been some horseback riding going on, and a couple pictures with them with a couple of lung darts in their hands for the effect there. But yeah, look, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that you don't mind circulating and talking about. It will be interesting to see maybe over the course of as this week goes on, whether or not, how much throwing there was, as part of this. I would imagine they're just not getting together to take cowboy pictures in horseback riding, but I don't know. We'll have to see. And I know a lot of people are wondering, where are guys like Jeremy Bernard and maybe some of these other younger wide receivers? Well, I don't think there's big reason to be concerned there. I think Aaron likes to get more of the veterans together more than anything. And for all we know, maybe Jeremy Bernard or one of his other kids was having to take the pictures. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that based on the pictures out there. But yeah, look, I mean, I think it was something quite interesting to surface on Instagram on Sunday. And, Aaron is getting some of these guys together again, and more than likely, going through, having some throwing going on within that, and obviously some team bonding. So once again, that's the kind of news, that's the kind of development on during the slow time of season that you certainly don't mind surfacing on the internet or talking about on a podcast such as this.
Right. And why wasn't, as you said, Jeremy Bernard and Will Howard and others there? It's probably a lot of scheduling conflicts. Guys are busy, and I'm sure as much as those guys would have been invited and probably, I'm sure, wanted to go, maybe their schedules just didn't, properly align. But maybe we'll find out about somebody else that was there that just didn't happen to be on camera. Thought it was also just appropriate. I think it was Rodgers captioning the photo as last rodeo. Of course, this being, as he said, his final NFL season. And so the last sort of events like these he'll have as an NFL player. So was there any football afoot in this trip? Probably not. It doesn't look like it. But when you've worked with most of these guys before, have a relationship with these guys, you don't have to get that throwing session in, which really never meant that much anyway last year, even last season when they did those little bit of route running with Metcalf, then the group later in the year. You're not going to benefit a ton from just doing some routes on air. So it is just that team bonding, that closeness that will, come into play, that intangible factor that matters a lot. It's hard to quantify, but it's the reason why Pittsburgh still goes away for training camp, and Rodgers has really, praised his time in Latrobe and how special that is, and so just kind of get an early fix of that with these guys coming together and a new guy like Michael Pittman trying to get to know the group a little bit more.
And maybe they worked on hand signals or some verbiage or whatnot. Who knows? But once again, if this is what we must talk about with 2 weeks to go as a significant or somewhat significant happening over the weekend, for lack of a better word, or lack of things to talk about, then so be it. I think everybody should obviously be happy about that, especially when you look around the NFL and some of the other kind of stuff that surfaces, as far as maybe more negative stuff coming out of franchises during the offseason here. So, yeah, I thought it was good to see. I'm not sure who that one Cowboy was in the middle of that one
That's what
picture.
I was wondering. That was not a Steeler, right? Or just somebody went
I don't
unidentifying?
think so. That's not Ouijan, I don't think, right? Looks much
I don't think so.
looks much older for that. I can't figure it. Maybe that's the guy who owned all the clothes there, and I
Yeah.
don't know, the unknown wide receiver there. But yeah, that's thrown a lot of people off. Who the hell is that in the middle of the picture there?
Yeah, maybe somebody who owns the land. I don't know. I don't believe it was a Steelers player or anything like that. But good to see overall. But by the way, should mention going to have a live stream tonight, Dave and I, 7 p.m. Eastern time. So come join us for that on YouTube. How much of a benefit is it for Pittsburgh and the offense and their chance of season success that Rodgers is the same quarterback? Pittsburgh finally has continuity at quarterback, having the same starter in back-to-back seasons. The first time that's happened since Ben in 2020, in 2021. Does that outweigh the concerns over Rodgers' age and just some level of declining play in an offense that still on paper does not appear to be the most explosive in the NFL?
Look, I mean, the fact, it never hurts to have some level of continuity, especially, you had guys in Freiermuth and DK of this group, and obviously, look, it's good that they included Roman, right?
Sure.
Especially the way things transpired with Rodgers and Roman not necessarily being on the same page last year. I mean, is there value within this being Rodgers' second year with a couple of these guys? Absolutely, there is. But because of it, can you sit here and say? I mean, there's so many different factors. You obviously have Mike coming in, and McCarthy coming in as a head coach. You got a new offensive coordinator. You obviously have a few other new pieces on offense there. The biggest question still will be will Aaron be able to push the football down the field with further and with more regularity than he did last season? How what's going to be the average release time with him? Will he be able to hold on to the football a little bit longer? Will an even slightly more improved running game end up helping things? How will play it? Maybe utilizing play action at or on early downs end up helping this team? Will it be under center more versus in the shotgun? All those little things are going to play a part in this. But and I don't think just for the mere fact that Aaron Rodgers' second year in Pittsburgh is automatically going to solve some of those woes, especially when it comes to the passing game and pushing the football down the field. All that's going to have to come out in the wash. Hopefully with this new offense and all. And that, to me, that's one of the biggest concerns when it comes to this offense is how are they going to get more explosive plays, passing plays on offense, and how reliant will they have to be on yards after the catch? Because without the yards after the catch last season, I mean, this offense wouldn't have been as nearly as decent as it was. So, and I think even though to some degree you would expect the yards after the catch to be maybe right at, hopefully a little bit better than it was last year. There's going to be instances where they have to push the football down the field longer and more often, and the average yards per target is going to have to go up, especially with several of these players on offense as well too. So it's just we're going to have to wait and see on a lot of it. But the short answer is there benefit to Rodgers returning for his second year? Absolutely, but there are also a lot of different variables that coincide with that.
Well said, and I agree. It's hard to calculate, but having that same quarterback for guys like Pat Frymuth, who's never had the same quarterback week one back-to-back years, and DK Metcalf's played quarterback roulette from Seattle to Pittsburgh last year, and now having that continuity is good. And then obviously just having Rodgers McCarthy on the same page. Hopefully that's what the offense feels like, more connected, more in tune with each other, less figure it out, less sort of, stop and start. Even things like, again, we mentioned this in spring ball that Rodgers was working during OTAs as opposed to last year where he didn't take team reps until training camp. So this
Right.
time a year ago, Rodgers had not taken a single team rep with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was still to come until whenever the camp report date was last July. And so just all those factors combined, they're maybe small, they maybe not outweighing pure talent and ability, but they do add up. They do weigh in favor of Pittsburgh. And that is at the least a positive, even for those who wanted to go in a new direction, to find a new quarterback, find a longer term option, which are fair thoughts and feelings and opinions to have. But even if you detest Rodgers' return, the fact that he is coming back, there is some continuity, something to build upon, if only for 1 year, understanding this team will be resetting next year in 2027 with a new quarterback, but there's some benefit for the short term.
Yeah, and also the fact that even though Mike McCarthy is the new head coach, you've got history between those two, and hopefully they'll be able to pick up somewhat where they left off a couple of years ago in Green Bay, and that's these two have worked together before, and there is at least some added benefit in that, even though Mike McCarthy is technically a new head coach in Pittsburgh.
None of the guys on the trip have a podcast, right? Where I'm just wondering, will any of them be talking about their trip before training camp report date nears or we reach training camp report date? I don't think any of these guys are regulars on podcasts, correct?
Looking at the picture, no, but we'll see if Aaron Rodgers shows up on the McAfee show, I guess, between now and the start, or around the start of training camp there. I would imagine we're about due for an Aaron Rodgers appearance on McAfee.
Yeah, I mean, he's only been on there a couple times since signing with Pittsburgh, so I don't know if somebody else will show up as a guest somewhere. I think most of these guys have been a guest on someone's podcast, whether that's Cam Hayward's or Christian Kuntz, so maybe we'll get some more detail, but obviously, if not, I'm sure once July 28th rolls around, there'll be lots of conversation about what that trip and experience was like.
Right.
All right, Dave. Before we start our 90 and 30, I have an article up this morning. It's entitled, Here's How I'd Fix TJ Watt, with fix in air quotes, because I wouldn't say he's broken, but obviously it was a disappointing last year for a variety of reasons, and Watt in need of a bounce back season in 2026. I know there's been plenty of conversation about moving this guy around and getting him off his left outside linebacker spot, and there is some value in that, but it's not something that I tout as much as others. And so I just go through some things Pittsburgh can do outside of Watt just playing better to improve Watt's production and kind of get him closer back to form. I think the days of 20 sack seasons are likely gone, but a 15 sack season I think is very attainable for Watt. So the first thing is improving the team run defense. The better your run defense is, the more pass rush opportunities you have, the more third and longs you create, the better off you're going to be as a defense. And Pittsburgh's run defense the last 2 years has not been strong enough. And so that's sort of the first thing to get back to is good run defense will create more opportunities for your pass rush.
Yeah, at the very least, more opportunities in more predictable type situations. Whether it be second and long or third and long type situations where T.J. Watt maybe can play the run on the way to the quarterback. I think that is significant. I think you have in here the third and either or third or fourth and long, meaning 7 or plus yards, 10.6% of the time last season, as opposed to 2024, 11%, and 2023, obviously when 14.7%. Ideally, you'd like to get see this defense get back to those kind of numbers there from 2023.
Yeah, that's Watt's pressure rate on those third and long situations. So 10.6% pressure rate in 2025, 11% in 2024, 14.7 in 2023. So there was a decrease, which you would expect just given the drop in sack production, but it wasn't dramatic. It's down, but it's, I think, certainly something where Watt can get back to 12, 13%. And the more just and long situations you're in, obviously Pittsburgh also has to get off the field in those moments. They've struggled just allowing conversions in those situations. We've talked about that. That was felt and discussed last year. But I think obviously just the more you get back to stopping the run, and Pittsburgh certainly can stop the run with Eric Harmon in year two, Wyatt Black in year two, Cam Hayward returning, still running strong. The additions of Sebastian Joseph Day, a reimagined scheme. There's certainly reason to believe the run defense can improve upon where it was last year, where it was mighty inconsistent, and that's just good for all parties, Watt, of course, included.
Right. Yeah. The longer the opposing quarterback has to hold on to the football in situations during games, the better it could potentially be, not only for Watt, but the pass rush as a whole.
And as you always say, rush and coverage going together. So the coverage just doing their job and being tighter in the back end will obviously help. And the additions of Jamel Dean and Jalen Ramsey with a full year of safety play and the other additions Pittsburgh has made in the secondary, along with any schematic adjustments, can obviously help more. Pittsburgh could also rush T.J. Watt, where he dropped in the coverage over 9% of the time last year. That was up from 4.8% in 2024. And so just getting this guy to go forward more often is always good for pass rushers.
Yeah, you didn't draft him to play because of his coverage skills, right? And I'm with you on that. I was surprised that the number was as high as it was in there, especially when you look at what 4.8% in 2024. I'm with you. T.J. Watt's much more effective moving forward than he is moving backwards. So here on that.
Yeah, some of that was sort of their safe pressures and blitzes, some of these four-man blitzes last year, and some of it's against twin receiver sets or empty where your linebacker has to walk out. But just getting this guy to rush, I think at his peak production, he was dropping into coverage about 4 or 5% of the time, so 9%, a little higher than where you'd like it to be last year. So just from a volume standpoint, that obviously will just give Watt more chances and will naturally parlay itself into more pressures and more sacks. And obviously, I wrote here, some creative movement can help to sort of refresh and invigorate Watt and some of the benefits that come from that. I just don't find that to be the main issue or the main key to unlock TJ Watt and get him back to form. But it is going to be a component, at least talked about as a component. And obviously, we'll be charting and watching to see what that looks like in action.
Yeah, obviously, we don't think that we're going to see a 50-50 split between Watt playing left and right side, right? And probably not even, a 3-to-1 ratio. But he did sound, obviously, not that he has much of a choice. It doesn't sound like it. I think we're going to see him at least move around a little bit more, play some more on the right side than he has over the last several years here. Might even see him in the middle. We'll see how much we've talked quite a bit about how often will we see the three outside linebackers on the field moving into Patrick Graham's term as a defensive coordinator here. You would think we would see that more than we saw last year, but how much we don't know. What will Watt's role be within that? But the sheer fact of just being more creative is what you're calling for here, and not making so static of just being the left outside linebacker and being a lot more predictable where he might be coming from, especially on certain down and distances.
Not to be so detailed or specific, especially in the offseason, but what percentage of the time would you like to see Watt be moved around? I think he played left outside linebacker per our charting 96% of the time or so last year. What should that number be? What feels like the right number to you, Dave?
Less than that. I know that's pretty vague.
hmm
Look, I mean, I don't think we're going to get a gauge on this until about a quarter of a way through the season to start seeing maybe how this thing might be trending with him. I would think somewhere around, off the top of my head, more along the lines of maybe 92 or 91 or even 90% of the time, that number from left side dropping a little bit. But I mean, when you look at, let's say, 1,000 snaps over a season, how much does it take to drop it down to such a number there? That's why I joked at the top, just said anything less than that. I just think it just needs to be more noticeable on a game by game basis, even if it's like, you know, 3 or 4 snaps a game.
How much of an issue or benefit would it be for Watt? Because you hear it talked about as the central reason or central fix, and I think a lot of fan and certainly even media stories. How much do you think moving him around to some greater degree is going to improve things for him?
I just think overall the less predictive that you can be in certain situations, the more confusion that you could potentially create on the offensive side of football, of them trying to identify who's where and who's coming and who has to pick up who. The more often that you can get opposing offenses to break down in assignment, that presents a chance for someone, maybe not necessarily Watt, of getting a pressure or getting a hit, or creating chaos in the backfield there. So I just think it's a sum of what happens more so than Watt individually, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's fair. I understand the point. What would you say to the argument that I've made a couple times of TJ Watt being on the left side has not stopped him from being a Hall of Fame player, one of the greatest defensive pass rushers of his generation? So is really moving him around the answer? It certainly was not an issue before. How would you respond to that?
I don't think that we're going to look back 5 games, 6 games into the season and say, "Oh, well, look how much better the defense is," or look how much more productive Watt is for the sheer fact that he's moved around some there. Once again, I think this is, look, could you go the whole season and Watt play 100% of the time on the left side? And as far if everybody's doing their job, could Watt still have a productive season that way? I think the answer to that's yes. I just think that you're improving chances of not only maybe certain situations of having maybe him getting an extra sack or 2 or 3 along the way, as in addition to the entire defense maybe benefiting from the fact of him moving around. So I think it's, I don't want to sit here and say, well, Watt can have, the potential Watt maybe having 3 or 4 or 5 more sacks for the sheer fact of him rushing from a different position. That being a 1-for-1, I guess, correlation there. I just think just to benefit the defense as a whole and make it hard on opposing
Okay.
offenses is the benefit here.
So your point is the greater good of even if Watt
Right.
maybe doesn't get increased production, just the entire defense will be more effective, and that's obviously the ultimate goal.
Right.
I see.
I want the ability to create chaos because opposing offenses maybe having breakdowns or miscommunication, I think is the real benefit within that, not necessarily Watt's productions or numbers.
Okay, fair enough. And then my last point is, and we've mentioned this maybe once or twice on the podcast too, just simply play Watt a little bit less. You may have more of a full blown rotation, and there's incentive to do that after Nick Herbig's $100 million contract and Alex Highsmith still being a really quality player. So just given the sort of balls to the wall nature that Watt plays with as he gets older in age, it takes a toll on your body. Watt is not just a pass rusher; he's excellent and I would say elite against the run. I think was still great against the run last season, and so that takes a toll on you. And so if you reduce his snap count a little bit, he's been sitting in the low 80% range in games in which he's played the last, I think, 4 straight seasons. And so if he's in that, just to put a number to it, 75% snap count this year might do him some good to keep him fresher in game and down the stretch. And so you have good reason to make this a really a full blown trio between Watt, Highsmith, and Herbig.
Yeah, and look, it takes wild horses, I imagine, to try to pull him off the field here. And I don't think you go into each game saying, okay, we want Watt to play 70 or 72% of the snaps in this game. I think it's one of those things, you know it when you see it, type of thing. Obviously, if you're having a lot of three and outs and Watt's not getting gassed, as part of long drives or whatnot, there's probably not a lot of reason to pull him off the field there. But I think it's one of these situations that, okay, this drive is elongated. He's he looks a little gassed out there. Let's sub him out for 2 plays and then getting back in there type situation. So I don't think you go in there with a hardcore game by game basis of saying, X amount of percentage of snaps with him, but just I think it's more being cognizant of knowing and having faith in your other two outside linebackers potentially being on the field at the same time instead with him not out there. You should give you more confidence to be able to sub him out when you deem appropriate, and I think the whole byproduct of that will potentially be, a slightly reduced snap count overall.
Right, because the reality is, even if you didn't have Highsmith or Herbig, you just can't play Watt every single snap as he
Right.
gets into his 30s. There has to be some recognition that he needs more rest, and you can't treat him the way that you treated him when he was 25 years old. You're seeing that with Cam Hayward, where he still plays a ton, but his snap count has been managed and reduced in part because Pittsburgh has added some more talent around him now to justify and make you feel more confident in subbing him off and getting other guys on the field. And so that's going to have to start to begin with TJ Watt. One other thing I thought about too, and I'm trying to find the article. I just brought it back up that I wrote about last September, and I'm just speculating. I'm spitballing. I'd love to have this conversation with TJ Watt. He's not answering my calls right now, so I don't know if
Oh,
that's going to happen. But last year, he had an offseason interview with Graham Bensinger, who does a great job with interviews with all sorts of athletes and celebrities. And he'd mentioned he was changing his stance a little bit. He said, quote, "In my ninth season, I've never really thought about my stance. I play with my hand down, and I always thought to fire my hand back. Like a sprinter, you fire your hand separate ways. This year, we're really working on firing on through the hand and running through it on the ground as opposed to throwing it back and wasting momentum in the wrong direction. So that's an example of always trying to find the next thing to make things quicker," which certainly sounds good on paper, but I wonder if that maybe didn't work out well for him. Maybe he didn't feel comfortable with it. Maybe it didn't have the benefits he thought it did. So I know there's been some discussion about the analytics measuring a slower get off time for TJ Watt last year. I'd have some kind of questions about the methodology behind that, but I wonder just if he goes back to his sort of normal stance, felt tried and true, even if it didn't on paper be the most efficient stance in the world. Maybe he goes back to that. I don't know. Just kind of spitballing ideas and just things to look at of small tweaks he can make to return to form.
well, for the Steelers beat writers that listen to us, well, that might be a good quote to pull and go over with Watt during, maybe, let's say, one of the 2 or 3 times that he talks to the media during training camp here, right?
Mhm.
Because it's probably something he's not going to want to go in depth on, especially once the season starts there. So yeah, I think that's a great point there, and I know if one of us were part of the media gang, that I would suggest that we ask a question along the same lines that you just phrased it there. So I think you just did some of the media's job for him and gave him a great angle for a story for those that listen to us.
Or are there other stance changes he could make? Maybe there's additional things he can do. It's kind of like, because the argument that I've gotten the most feedback on when I talk about, well, Watt's been a Hall of Fame player from the left side. Why change it now? The argument against that would be he's not quite the same TJ Watt anymore, where he's not maybe as explosive or as physically dominant as he was. And so as you age, you're going to have to be a little more creative and start to kind of win with brain over brawn. And sort of like Ben. Remember Ben in his final years was for the first time ever talking about mechanics and changing his throwing motion a little bit or adjusting things or focusing on footwork, things that never were a conversation point before. Maybe that happens in older age where you have to kind of focus on a little more on technique. Not to say that Watt has not focused on technique. He certainly has, and probably a lot more than Ben ever did. But just you think about things a bit differently as you get into your 30s because you're just not that 24-year-old spring chicken anymore. So I'm sure it's been a lot of kind of soul searching for TJ Watt. And obviously, not puncturing his lung with a dry needle also will be very good for TJ Watt in 2026. And that is, needless to say. But just kind of brainstorming ways to get Watt back on track.
And then look, we've talked about this several times. The fact that what was there only 8 games last year that during the regular season that I think Herbig, Highsmith, and Watt were all active for at the same time. So the mere fact if Herbig and Highsmith can stay on the field and not miss as many or at least fewer games, if not none, this season, the byproduct of that should come out in the wash of what decreasing his snap count a little bit, although he did miss a couple of games late last season on his own because of the whole dry needling thing. So once again, I think it's a sum of other things that can play a role, not only in the creative movement, but in the snap counts and all like this. If this team can stay healthy and be a little more, stay healthy at the outside linebacker position and also be a little bit more creative as far as, putting 3 out there on the field or when 2 are out there, moving them around a little bit. And in addition to the first thing that you stated about, moving him forward more instead of having him worry about coverage, I think all those things do add up to, the main goal here, in which the whole, getting more overall production, quality production out of TJ Watt in 2026, especially more than 2025.
Let me ask you this. What percent chance would you give Watt exceeding 7 sacks in 2026 over his 2025 number?
Yeah, I mean, if he stays healthy for if he only plays in, let's say, 16 regular season games, I mean, give me the over on that. I mean, give me the over on that. I think even if he plays 14 games, I think what people are, I think the bigger question is, and we've hit on this, and sack totals being down. We got to see this defense get back over that 50 sack mark. Overall, and obviously you're going to expect the outside linebackers to have a high percentage. What did I talk about with Ross and the other guys? And I think you to some degree somewhere around, I forget what we
said. 35 sacks combined between Watt, Herbig, and Highsmith?
like 34 and a half over under or something like that. Yeah, we've got to see this group as a whole hit that number, and you would expect if they do hit such a number that Watt's going to have pretty good lion's share of that number as well too. So 7, I'm not worried about the 7. I will be disappointed if that number, is really, be quite honest, not approaching or over double that 7 numbers.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of taking this to a place. So what, give me, I know you said over under, but give me a percent, like 90% chance he hits above 7 sacks. Well, and let's assume he plays 16 games, misses 1, he plays in 16. But what percent would you give over 7?
92%.
90, you love it. 92%. You love that number today. What about 10 sacks? What percent chance he reaches 10 sacks?
87%.
Okay, so still pretty high. I mean, 92, 87. What about 15 sacks?
Ooh. 68%.
Okay, so that's 2/3 chance he hits 15 sacks. All right, what about 20 sacks?
Yeah, that's where it's probably going to drop down there. I'd probably say around 15% chance or so.
Okay, all right, but you feel like 15 plus sacks is you're pretty confident in.
Look, once again, I think this is a sum of everything that I've talked about and you're talking about here, and kind of my thoughts on this defense under Patrick Graham here. The thing I'm most excited about this year when it comes to the 2026 Steelers is the defense here. I think if this unit stays healthy and we see a lot of the things that I think Patrick Graham, I'm going to give you some give the listeners a little bit what do they call it, behind baseball, or what do you like
Inside baseball, how the
inside?
sausage gets made.
Yeah.
Over here.
We're looking at things to write about, and I think one of the things Ross is trying to hit on here before the to at least get some conversation on the site and some intriguing thought here is Ross is looking back at Patrick Graham over his career as kind of a defensive coordinator, and we've talked in the past about defensive spending and how sites and analysts and all want to get into using cap numbers instead of cash and all like
Mhm.
that. And Ross pulled up some data for me to look at this morning, wondering if it was cap totals versus cap totals versus cash totals, and he's pulled the numbers, and looks like what he has pulled is actual cap spending. And I was explaining to him that there is a difference between cap dollars and cash dollars, and how I'm not a huge fan of using cap dollars, because all it takes is, even if you took TJ Watt, you restructured his contract this year, what have you really done there other than lower his cap number? You got the same player, the same situation, and all you've done is manipulate his cap number to make it lower. But the thing he's angling here for, and regardless of what you're using, whether it be cap spending or cash spending, this is a better quality group. Here's the main takeaway. Patrick Graham's going into a situation where it feels like he's got a better unit to work with based on either cap spending or cash spending. And I think based on what he's been able to do and what he's had to work with, and I think that's the biggest takeaway here during his career as the defensive coordinator here, is that we'll get to see, we'll get to see his defense or his plan work, because it's his defense, right? Mike McCarthy's going
Yes.
to be in charge of the offense, and I think that's one thing that's exciting. I don't think you're going to see Mike McCarthy be too overly involved with what happens on the defensive side of football here. So one of the giant takeaways for myself, all offseason since Patrick Graham's been hired, and obviously Mike McCarthy, the head coach, and all like that, is to see what a guy like Patrick Graham can get done, and sort of the things that we're expecting in this schematically with this defense, with a better quality set of players. And look, I mean, oftentimes it's not so much the coaching as it is you give a coach good players to work with. Well, hell yeah, the defense will probably look good. I think the coaches will tell you that too, as well on top of it here. So I think the giant takeaway that I have here, and Watt obviously included in this to a large degree here, is if this unit can stay healthy with schematics and kind of overall philosophy and scheme that Patrick Graham has here, is we should see this defense back over the 50 sack amount. We should see a better run defense from this team. We should see fewer explosive plays overall. So I think that's one of the gigantic takeaways. But I just throw that in there because some of the conversations that we've had have been less that Ross is working on right now is more about what can this defense do with Patrick Graham and having better unit overall, whether it be whether you want to look at it from a cash or a cap spending aspect. I
All
got
right.
way
You
off
did.
track there, but I think once again I think the main takeaway is, yeah, do you need TJ Watt? It is TJ Watt hitting 15 sacks the main goal here? No, but I mean we do need to see, I think, this defensive unit somehow get to 50 or more sacks on the season. And obviously you would think if they're able to do that, TJ Watt's probably got a good chance of having 15 sacks as part of let's say 53 55 total.
Was Patrick Graham your favorite coaching hire that Mike McCarthy made? Because it sounds like a lot of your premise for this defense being better is based on what Patrick Graham can offer it.
I mean, I think on a defensive side, I mean, look, I'm excited about Campen and Jari Evans on the offensive side of football, and the impact that those guys will potentially have on the offensive line. I think the fact that McCarthy coming in and having worked with Rodgers before, has some benefit here, more so than maybe a first year or different outside head coach. Because look, Aaron Rodgers probably doesn't even return to Pittsburgh if Mike McCarthy's not the head coach. But I think when you look, if you're asking me in general, the hire on the defensive side of football that has me the most excited, yeah, I think it's Patrick Graham, because there's no longer, I don't think we're not going to be in a situation we've been for eons now, is who's holding the play call card on the defensive side of football, who has what say. Is Mike Tomlin calling this? Is Mike Tomlin calling everything? How much did Terrell Austin do? And just look, you got different overall philosophy coming in here, and you obviously still have a lot of money spent on that side of football. So yeah, the expectations are high, and I'm hoping and thinking that Patrick Graham will be able to pull that off, because for the sheer fact too is I don't think this team gets to 10, 11, 12 wins in 2026 without the defense doing more than their fair share of the work here. And I do think too, if you're going to get into and kick in that playoff win door this year as well too, I think defense is going to play a big role in that as well. So yeah,
Sure.
I am excited to see what Patrick Graham can do when it's going to be easy to point the finger at this is his defense this year.
Yeah, there's not going to be any ambiguity about whose defense it is. It's going to be the Patrick Graham defense and not who's calling the play, like you said, was sort of the debate between Tomlin and Terrell Austin last year. So, yeah, any final thoughts there on kind of getting it back to TJ Watt and just getting him back to form?
No, I like it. I agree with everything you said, and once again, I think overall though this is a benefit for the entire defense.
Hmm.
In addition to doing these things with Watt, I think it makes the
Sure.
entire defense better, and I think obviously too you would think that it's going to result in a bounce back season for Watt.
Right. But if TJ Watt is performing at a high level, that also makes the defense better because then it
Mhm.
really forces all the attention back to Watt, which really never left last year. He still was getting a ton of attention last year, which is still one reason why the numbers were down a little bit. But obviously, if he's back to form, then that really just creates all the one-on-one opportunities for Herbig and Highsmith and the others for those guys to go out there and eat.
Right.
All right, Dave, let's go to our 90 and 30 series and pick things back up. And we'll start off with long snapper. So we love starting with a special teamer on a Monday. And long snapper Christian Kuntz back, the veteran there. Looks like it's going to be part of that battery. Boswell and Kuntz and Cameron Johnson being the holder.
Yeah, Christian Kuntz has been the Steelers' long snapper since 2021, and obviously a couple years ago re-signed on a 3-year deal. Right now, he's played in all 17 regular season games again last year. In addition to the playoff game last year, he's yet to miss a game since becoming the Steelers' long snapper. In total, he tallied 2 tackles last season on special teams, with both of those obviously coming on special teams. The big thing with him is and long snappers is if you're not, you hope the only way that you're talking about them during any one single game is Kuntz either downing a punt down the field or making a tackle on special teams. Anything outside of that, as far as bad snaps or high snaps or blowing a block or whatnot, is obviously if you don't know the long snapper's name, if you're a general fan, then that's usually a good sign that he's doing his job. Now, if you look at grading by Pro Football Focus, which even gets more suspect when you're talking about special teams and long snapper, and I know you look at snaps a lot closer than I do during a regular season when it comes to the all 22 tape. I think he's held his own, and I think that's what you kind of ask for it at a minimum when it comes to your long snapper there. Right now, I mean, there's no other long snapper on the on the off season roster right now, right? So,
Right.
barring one being brought in, even if one is brought in, uh, right before start of training camp or during training camp, the chances of that guy getting the job are slim and none, basically, unless Kuntz was to get hurt or just have a disastrous training camp and or preseason there. So, I mean, the expectation is for Kuntz to continue to do what he's done since he's been the Steelers' long snapper. I think you obviously don't want to get in situations where you and I are having to break down a missed field goal or a blocked field goal or extra point or a block punt because of a snap type situation. As long as we're not highlighting him in a recap of a game outside of him maybe making a tackle or downing a punt. I mean, that's what you ask for out of a long snapper here. I think one of the interesting thing, not that we get into the situation with him, God forbid that you ran into the situation, but if you got down outside linebackers, you could get a snap or two out of them.
I don't know if you could do that.
As an outside linebacker there, but I always like to throw that in because several years ago, I think even, what was it? His first season, 2021, he did play a little bit at outside linebacker, and I think he even got a sack during a preseason game that way. I just interesting FYI to throw in there. But is he probably going to be a Pro Bowl long snapper or an All Pro? Probably not. But just don't give us anything to talk about, and he'll be just fine.
He gave us something to talk about a year ago. Remember, he got hurt in the preseason. That's where Logan Lee came in, had that sternum injury, and he played through it, to his credit. And I had that clip of that great snap, like A-plus, picture-perfect snap against the Jets, the Boswell. Not the game winner, I don't think it was, but the 56-yarder that Boswell hit earlier in the game, where it was just perfectly, like, because the snapper controls the laces. Big debate. Every time I mention that, people lose their mind. How does the snapper control the laces? They do. They work on spin rate and making it so where the holder doesn't have to spin the ball. Sometimes they still do. You're not going to be perfect on it. It's very hard to get the laces perfect, but he did on that snap. It was perfectly done. And Kuntz was just, the fact he played in that game where he thought he might miss this game. Kudos to him. Tough guy. Seems like a good guy, obviously. Quintessential Pittsburgh guy. Through and through, has the podcast, all that stuff. He did seem to struggle later in the year. I forget exactly what it was, but there were a couple of poor snaps. I think that kind of goes to the PFF grade that you mentioned of him not grading out super well. I'm sure Kuntz could not care at all about what PFF has to say, but there were, I think, some snapping issues where it felt shakier at the end than it was at the beginning. So making sure there are no issues, making sure that your snaps are clean and consistent are going to be key. I think there was I think it was more an issue on punts than it was on field goals last year, but just something to watch there. And then he's also in a contract year, correct? Am I mistaken on that? And so playing for wanting to stick around for a new coaching staff, a new special teams coordinator. So it's kind of a 1 year prove it type of thing for him. And so also just a little incentive to really button up and play well. But he snapped well. He's been an asset overall, and hopefully that continues.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go to Logan Lee next on the list. We just mentioned Lee, who filled in for Kuntz long snapping and did an admirable job in the preseason game last year, but hard to think that's going to be his ticket to the 53-man roster. And so Lee, really sort of last chance for him to try to keep grabbing a spot. He has done it in past years. He did it last season, got work early in the year, but then got replaced by Oto Mewa. What does the fate of Logan Lee hold in 2026, Dave?
Yeah, interesting summer ahead for Logan Lee, former 6th-round draft pick in 2024, missed entire rookie season due to a calf injury, was on the 53-man roster as one of 8 defensive linemen to open the regular season last year. In total, played, I think, 47 total defensive snaps last season to go along with 25 more on special teams. He had 2 total tackles, 1 quarterback hit, 2 passes defensed, mostly lined up over opposing tackles and in the B gap during his limited playing time in 2025. Look, the fact that he's only logged 47 total defensive snaps in his first 2 NFL seasons doesn't give us a lot to work with at this point. Ahead of him entering his 3rd NFL training camp, the Steelers obviously selected another defensive lineman in this year's draft, and you've got guys like Kevin Job. You got a lot of people kind of angling for that deep roster spot this year. I think he really needs to have a strong training camp and preseason. I remember Logan Lee a couple years ago being the first player that I clicked the tape on ahead of. I think it was the Shrine Bowl that year, because of the fact it matched what the kind of Steelers loosely look for in defensive linemen. And my main takeaway, even at that time, was needed sand in the pants. So I think one of the things we need to look at, you would expect if he stays healthy most of the summer and getting into the preseason, he's gonna log quite a few preseason snaps again. Will we see him so much at nose tackle? Will we see him more as 3-eye or four tech or something like that? Going to be interesting to chart that throughout the preseason. There, we got to see him hold up against the run better. We got to see him get that sand in the pants and play better run defense. I don't think he's ever going to be a much more of a pass rusher than he is to this point. To his credit, in a few plays that he did play last season, he made a couple plays, a couple of those pass defense stick out in my mind when you think of Logan Lee last year. But nothing's guaranteed when it comes to a 53-man roster spot this offseason here, because obviously you get past let's say your top 5 defensive linemen, the way it feels like it's going to shake out. Or is this team going to keep 6? Are they going to keep 7? What does that 6th and 7th spot potentially look like here? So he absolutely is going to have to earn a 53-man roster spot this year. And if he does not, I think he becomes a potential candidate to open the regular season on the practice squad. But a lot of eyes should be on him once we get into the preseason to see where he's lining up and see the quality of play, the quality of opponent that he goes against, and more particularly, I want to see how he plays against the run up front there during the preseason.
Yeah, that's the big thing with Lee. I just have always felt, even when he was drafted, just too small to be a Steelers defensive lineman. He has the height, but didn't have quite the bulk, and the length wasn't there either. Like Loudermilk was sort of a similar build in terms of height and lack of length, but he felt a little more filled out than Lee was. And we talk about McCarthy wanting these big defensive linemen, and they go out there and they sign Sebastian Joseph Day, they draft Gabriel Rubio. Lee just doesn't seem to quite fit that body type, that mold. Now, I do think he improved his hand usage last year and his pass rush arsenal to be a little more active and energetic with his hands, and there was some development there we saw in the preseason, but the run defense really just never got there. And he was active to begin the year. He was part of the played 12 snaps against Seattle, and then they end up going to, I think after the bye, they go to Maywa, got the helmet over him. Lee doesn't play in the game until week 14. Did have a couple of key plays you mentioned. He had 2 pass deflections, one against Cleveland, one against Baltimore, which was that key. I think it was maybe a third down, or I forget the situation, or a screen pass he blew up.
Yeah, it was out on the right side, yeah.
Yeah, he played 4 defensive snaps across weeks 17, 18, had 2 pass breakups in those moments. And so that is certainly part of the ethos of a Steelers defensive lineman. They want to get their hands up in throwing lanes, and they've had guys who can do it at a really high level. And so kudos to Lee for that. But I just don't know if he has the size and the run defense to really hold up when you're facing, competition of some guys that are just simply much bigger, stronger, and stouter against the run than he is.
Yeah, I kind of theorize we might see him for around 50 defensive plays during the preseason in the 3 preseason games, assuming he stays healthy. So you can bet we'll be charting that, talking about that as preseason goes on.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's worked hard. He had his rookie year spent on IR with that kind of minor soft tissue, hamstring, calf, whatever it was, and just trying to fight. And he stuck around, and he stuck a little bit longer than I thought he would. And so there has been some growth in his game. Still a pretty young guy, but I just think it's a tough group with all these other guys in competition. I got to go to Maywa, who's a more athletic, better pass rusher than Lee is, and Gabriel Rubio, probably, I would say definitely a better run defender than Lee is. I just don't know where Lee stands out in a very crowded field.
Right. Don't be surprised if he ends up practice squad to open the season.
Could he be cut outright? Because at some point,
Sure.
if this guy's just not making the team, then you
Sure.
just if Jobberty gets a hat or somebody else. So Or the next guy on the list to kind of segue into that, Dean Lowry, who was signed and brought back and reuniting with Mike McCarthy and Patrick Graham and guys he played in Green Bay. McCarthy drafted him with the Packers way back in 2016. Lowry spent all of last year with a torn ACL. He suffered on the first padded practice in training camp. So probably back because of the coaching connections, but he'll add some veteran depth, Dave.
Yeah, one last chance for him to stick in the NFL this year, coming off of that ACL last year. He's now 32 years of age, and that's going to, all these things combined are going to make it tough for him overall. Became an unrestricted free agent this offseason after missing all of last season. The Steelers finally re-signed him to a one-year veteran benefit contract. They did not give him a signing bonus in that. He can, however, earn a $100,000 roster bonus if he makes the initial 53-man roster later this summer here. Father Time's ticking on this dude overall here. When you look at the what we perceive to be the top five, at least kind of locks on this 53-man roster, guys like Cameron Hayward, Derek Harmon, Keanu Benton, Y.A. Black, and Sebastian Joseph Day, then it becomes a number of situations. Are they going to keep 6 or are they going to keep 7 defensive linemen in total? You've got quite the cast of guys competing for those spots. We just talked about Logan Lee. You mentioned Otomewo. Anthony Goodlow, who we've already covered, could be a little bit of a dark horse guy competing for this spot. Kyler Ball's been around for a tad bit now, albeit practice squad. You drafted Rubio. You got Kevin Jabity as one of the top undrafted free agents of this team. And then, of course, Lowry in the mix there. To me, realistically, if Lowry winds up making this 53-man roster come week 1, something's probably gone wrong somewhere when it comes to maybe injuries of these top 5 guys on a defensive line depth chart. You would think that via the draft or via some of these other younger guys that you have on the roster at this point, 1 or 2 of them should, of that group of guys that we just went over, talking about Lee, Otomewo, Goodlow, Baugh, Rubio, Jabity, that a couple of those guys should be better options than Lowry is overall. I don't want to, I mean, the fact that Lowry's hung on as long as he's had and had the NFL career that he's had, 16 and a half sacks for a career so far, I think, it is good overall. But, the fact of the matter is we should not, the expectations, at least on my end, is for Lowry not to make this 53-man roster. And, I think this preseason could eventually be it for him unless he's willing to be on a practice squad for an NFL team to start the season.
Could they want another vet as just backup defensive line depth, even as the last guy on that D-line depth chart? I know Joseph Day is there, but got some young guys, and Black and Harmon are not old guys, and Jabity and Lee's still only 26, and Rubio. So could he capture that 7th spot as just a known commodity in this defense? I mean,
I want him on the roster because he deserves to be on the roster, not because of previous time served.
No, I understand, but there's value in having a veteran and all the benefits you get with a veteran that come with that, and a guy that knows your defense. So, I mean, I was a little surprised to see Lowry come back in the first place, but the coaching connection, obviously, I think is the reason why he's back. And so, we'll see what he can do coming off the injury. I mean, how did you think his 2024 season in Pittsburgh went, where he played some?
Really nondescript overall.
Yeah, it's probably a good way. Kind of like Lee had a couple. His best plays were probably with the ball in the air, but blocked a field goal against the Jets. I think he had a pass deflection elsewhere, but didn't really kind of do it for me. So, we'll see. But I assume just being a vet and knowing this defense for these younger guys and having those coaching connections is the reason why Lowry's back.
Look, I've said it several times over the years, too. I mean, I have no issue with them re-signing. Was I a bit surprised that they re-signed him? Yes. But the fact that we're talking about a veteran benefit contract with no guaranteed money with a carrot of $100,000 hanging in front of him if he makes a roster, no issue with that whatsoever. You can never have too many of these experienced guys because Lord knows you just don't know how injuries are going to play out. And look, he's familiar, obviously, with Mike McCarthy. crafty. They know the kind of dude that they're getting there. I'm sure he will communicate well with these younger guys, and I think he's played enough where he has something that he can teach these younger guys as well too. I just think, and I think the hope is, at least probably a lot of people listening to this podcast is that he probably doesn't make the roster, because if he does, something probably has happened with one of these top, or two of these top 5 guys on the depth chart injury wise. It's gotten you in a situation where you do need a guy that can eat up some snaps and that has played some NFL snaps before in Lowry.
Sort of like when the team brought back Fehoko last year was sort of the feeling on that, even though Fehoko was changing positions from nose tackle to defensive end, but kind of the vibe there I got. And obviously Fehoko didn't make the roster. We'll see if Lowry can. All right, next on the list is a rookie cornerback in Timon Lynam. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Undrafted free agent out of Pitt. I think he was at, you told me, Nebraska for most of his time. Am I right on his background, Dave? Okay.
Yeah.
And got signed by Pittsburgh. He's got the profile of a Pittsburgh Steelers corner. He's big, he's long, he's physical. Pat Narduzzi talked about his thumping nature, and so I think he'll fit in culturally, but obviously a long way to go to stick anything beyond the summer, Dave.
Yeah, he's long like the Steelers like him, 6'1" and 3/4, 189 pounds, 32 and 3/4 inch arms on him for his college career, which started at Nebraska in 2020. He played in 46 games during his college career, registered 71 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, 8 passes defense, and 2 forced fumbles. Ran his 40-yard pro day, 40-yard dash in 4.5 seconds. Or 4.56 seconds. Vertical jump 31.5 inches there. I think the more impressive things about his workout at Pro Day, had a short shuttle drill of 4.32 seconds and a 3-cone of 17.28 seconds. Those are respectable numbers there. Once again, he has kind of the length that the Steelers like in their outside cornerbacks, but it's still going to be extremely hard for him to make the 53-man roster, and that's because of we talked previously about kind of the depth that the Steelers have, at least entering training camp, at the cornerback position here. One would think that he would improve his chances at a potential roster spot if he shows some special teams ability throughout training camp and the preseason. He did log quite going back and looking, a pretty healthy share of special team snaps during his college career, especially over the course of his last 3 seasons. So if he can maybe show himself to be a top gunner, an outside vice defender, that would go a long way, and maybe him sneaking into, let's say, a 52nd or 53rd roster spot here. He obviously needs to stay healthy throughout the summer to give himself a chance. He should play, you would think, quite a bit during the preseason here, especially when you think about some of the guys that probably won't be playing in this secondary. But I think overall, this is going to be a pretty big uphill battle for Lynam when it comes to him making the 53-man roster. And I think more than likely you're dealing with a guy that's going to be competing for a practice squad spot to open a regular season. That feels a lot more realistic and attainable when it comes to a guy that joined this team. He was kind of a rookie minicamp tryout player there. So the fact that he was able to impress when it comes to being a tryout player and getting himself signed, there is something to like there. But I think realistically moving forward here, barring injuries, we're looking at Lynam trying to get a practice squad spot throughout the preseason.
There's just so many cornerbacks, and just trying to find reps is going to be tough. I mean, it's probably one guy who wouldn't hate a Joey Porter Jr. Holden, the more cornerbacks who aren't working. Obviously, Lynam's not going to send the first set team reps if Porter holds in, but just the Lions get one guy thinner, then that kind of bumps everyone up a spot, so wouldn't be bad for him. So he has the profile, but obviously has a lot to prove here and probably won't get a lot of reps to do it. So that'll be the challenge for Lynam, is just to maximize the opportunities he has. But we mentioned before, other guys have done that. Derek Porter Jr. did that last year, and other guys have emerged in the past. Deshaun Jameson did that to a degree last year too. So just a name to watch. I think an interesting name going forward.
I agree.
All right, next on the list is Laith Marjan. He is the undrafted rookie kicker out of Kansas, signed to help give Chris Boswell a lighter summer. And obviously, Marjan should probably be doing a lot of work in the preseason this year. So, all your thoughts, Dave, on Laith Marjan? Lay 'em on me.
Not much. Look, he's going to be chasing down footballs he's going to be doing a lot of things that Chris Boswell doesn't feel like he needs to do here. This is a guy that's brought in. Look, he's going to be showcasing himself not only to the Steelers but to other teams. I'm guessing during the preseason to see if, especially if he's rolled out there for a 50+ yard kick there. But I mean, barring an injury to Boswell, it goes without saying that he had zero chance at being the Steelers kicker here. Now, you have to think too about can he keep his name on the Rolodex should something happen to Boswell during the season, maybe for a game or two, or something even longer than that. Could he get himself in a position where he's the first guy that the Steelers call back should they need a kicker in any given week here? But outside of watching him probably kick in all three of the preseason games, if he should indeed last on the roster that long, that's going to be about it when it comes to him. So I don't think he has obviously done kickoffs during his college career, which went East Carolina to South Alabama and then ultimately Kansas. Seems like he's got a fairly decent leg overall. Let's see, he made 2 of his 3 field goal attempts at 50 yards or longer during his college career and 12 of his 13 attempts from 40 to 49 yards. I'd like to see the Steelers roll him out there during the preseason to try, 52, 53 yarder just to see what kind of leg he has. But we're talking about a guy that is going to be gone sooner rather than later here.
Yeah, he's a strong-legged kicker. He was the kickoff specialist at East Carolina, and that kind of speaks to the leg strength. He had a 55-yarder against Texas Tech in 2025. That was his career long. I know at one point the broadcaster said he was hitting from 65 in practice, probably off of a tee than a holder, but just a note on that. He had a really good, 2024 season at South Alabama. He was excellent, and then he was still kind of moving right along with Kansas until the end of last year, and he kind of slumped. I'm trying to find the exact stats on that. I don't think I have it off the top of my head, but I think he missed maybe like 3 of his last 5 kicks or something like that. And so just avoiding those slumps, you can't have that as a kicker in the NFL. Miss here or there, it happens, but you can't be missing, consecutive kicks and got to be able to mentally bounce back from that. So he's a big guy. He's a big kicker. He's 6'2", 205, so atypical of what most kickers have, and the leg strength certainly is there. If he gets a 50+ yarder in preseason, that's going to turn some heads. And as you said, you're playing for good tape for the rest of the NFL. I think I always use the example of Matthew Wright whenever he signed an undrafted free agent out of UCF, and he was not going to beat up Boswell. He did not beat up Boswell, but he's bounced around. He's had an NFL career. He's kicked in a bunch of games. He's kicked for the Steelers when Boswell missed some time. And so you put on good tape, make yourself a name to remember for all the right reasons. You might get brought back if something happens to Boswell, knock on wood, or another team in the NFL needs you. Ben Sauls last year was not going to beat up Boswell. He signed with the Giants, and I think he's still with the Giants, I want to say. What did Sauls do last year? The local kid out of Pitt. He kicked in a couple of games last year for the G-Men. He kicked in 3 games. He went 8 of 8 on field goals, 7 of 7 on extra points. So, just those are the stories you look at if you're Laith Marjan, saying I may not going to win the job now. Boswell getting his new deal, but I can still make myself useful in the preseason, and who knows what will happen during the year.
Yeah, I think his biggest goal should at least get himself, assuming he doesn't get a job somewhere else in the NFL, to get him as the first name the Steelers call should they run into an issue with the kicker.
Yeah, and fun fact, if you're wondering, Laith means lion in Arabic. His father was born in Kuwait, and so that's some of his heritage, and that's where Laith comes from. And I have my notes here. He enjoys cooking, steak and pasta especially, so go cook up something nice with Danny Crossman and endear yourself to him. He's a right-footed kicker, by the way. I just say that because Ben Sauls last year was a lefty, and so Marjan's more the common right-footed kicker variety.
All right.
All right. I'm sure everyone enjoyed Laith Marjan. Fun facts. All right. Last on the list here, Dave. Ryan McCullum trying to stick on this roster again.
All right, he was a restricted free agent this offseason. He's been around the Steelers for a few years now. Re-signed back in March, 1-year contract. Just $75,000 fully guaranteed as part of that deal. He's really been the Steelers' top backup center for each of the last 2 seasons there. Last season, played all of 8 offensive snaps, 73 more on special teams. The offensive snaps that he played in 2025 were basically even split between the center and the left guard positions. Special team snaps included him playing left guard on the field goal and extra point units. For as long as he's been around in the NFL, since 2021, undrafted free agent out of Texas A&M with the Houston Texans, has played all of 262 total offensive snaps, with obviously most of those coming at center. A little more than 150 of those snaps, 153 in total, came in 2024 as a member of the Steelers, and due to Zach Frazier missing time his rookie season due to the ankle injury there. Prior to 2024, he spent a lot of time on the Steelers practice squad the previous 2 seasons. When you look ahead to this summer for Ryan McCollum, look, you brought in Brock Hoffman this offseason. You obviously, I think really another threat to him might be Greg Crippen, the undrafted free agent out of Michigan, who was the tryout player that got signed. He's a true center there. There's going to be a lot of competition for McCollum, and the fact that McCollum, he's really a center. He can give you snaps at guard, but really nondescript play at guard overall there. And the fact that Hoffman has played a lot at center and can give you better snaps at guard is going to make this really 1-for-1 when it comes to battling. Brock Hoffman seems to be his biggest competition when it comes to a roster spot. I view Brock Hoffman as a much upgraded version of Ryan McCollum. Overall, there it's going to be a tough ride for McCollum this offseason. I suspect we'll see him obviously in some preseason games because the Steelers just don't have many centers to choose from once Zach Frazier leaves the field there. But all this to say that it feels like McCollum's going to need an injury or 2 on the offensive line to make the 53-man roster. And I think more realistically here, and it's going to be interesting to see what Crippen can give this team at center. And will even though Crippen really not a lot of guard, if much of any, during his college career there, will they let Crippen showcase a little bit at guard during the preseason? Probably not, but I mean, I think you got to leave yourself at least open to that happening here. I think realistically, you're looking at McCollum, if he sticks in Pittsburgh past the preseason, it would be as a practice squad player.
I mean, he's probably going to work McCollum's second team center a lot throughout camp, right? Because it sounds like Hoffman was working second team right guard. If he's competing for the right guard spot, he'll get a lot of opportunity there. So does that do anything to improve McCollum's chances?
I think you're going to have to see Hoffman play some center during the preseason. I don't think there's 2 ways around it, because I think the way roster numbers play out here with the offensive line, whether they keep 8, 9, or 10. And I think we would both be surprised as we sit here right now, barring injuries, if this team kept 10. It is hard to shoehorn McCollum into this.
If they keep 9, though, and if Broderick Jones is on an injured list to begin the year, be it reserve, PUP, or IR, which is certainly plausible, couldn't McCollum be the 9th?
I still don't like his chances as good as maybe I do. Maybe who was the other Jones that we talked about? Stephen Jones.
Jones?
Because you got a potential of tackle guard type situation there, and because of the fact that you got Hoffman that should be this team's backup center here. I just think it's tough, even with Broderick Jones potentially starting the season on PUP. To me, it's still hard shoehorn in McCollum into a spot on this 53-man roster. And I think primarily for the fact that he, center capable really only, even though, you throw him out there at guard, just haven't been overly impressed with any guard work that he's gotten throughout his NFL career here, whereas Hoffman's has been much better. I fully expect Hoffman to be the backup center on this team because, look, if you did keep McCollum to be your backup center, then you're almost obligated to dress him on game days as well too. So what does that do to the rest of your inactive list?
Yeah, that's fair. I think you're right. The lack of position flexibility is going to hurt McCollum. He's really been just the center only, and if Hoffman can play center and guard, then that obviously gives him the edge. But I just want to see how many center reps Hoffman gets and how much of his time is going to be on that right guard battle. I mean, it's just hard to say right now. I think in my roster deconstruction series, I gave McCollum a 20% chance to make the 53-man roster for week 1. Would you pick a higher number, a lower number, the same?
Lower than
How
that.
much?
Yeah.
How much lower?
I'd give McCollum, as we sit here right now, probably, and barring injury, of course,
Sure,
I'd probably put it around 5%.
It's that low. So really, I mean, so if they kept the ninth offensive lineman, and it wasn't Broderick Jones. If he was injured, you think it's going to be
Someone other than
Driscoll,
McCollum,
Stephen Jones, somebody other than McCollum. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, he's played okay. I know he filled in for Frazier 2 years ago, and he had some tough assignments. He had Dexter Lawrence. They gave him help, obviously, but I mean, he has played, I think, acceptable, passable football when he's been on the field.
Okay. If you say so.
I don't know. I mean, was that what was your impression of him 2 years ago?
He got you in and out of games,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
definitely not a guy that you want to roll out there 4 or 5, 6 more games as your starting center. Look, I mean, we'll be able to tell right out of shooting the first couple of preseason games and really at training camp as well too. You'll be able to pass along Hoffman his work at center, and then once we get into preseason too. I mean, if Hoffman's not barely playing any center during the preseason, I'd be surprised if that happened, but B, that would be a tell that maybe he's not going to be the backup center. But I fully expect Hoffman to get work and be on course to be the backup center. And if that is indeed the case, it's just so hard to map out a roster spot for McCollum here.
But you would say when the team first comes out, second team offensive line to open up camp, you would think McCollum's going to be working at center. Is that fair?
Possibly.
So you're not convinced?
I'm not convinced. I want to see it. Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. So who's second team right guard if you think Hoffman's going to end up playing center?
Well, we talked when we broke down Hoffman. He could legitimately get a shot to potentially compete for that starting right guard spot along with Spencer Anderson there.
And I think he will. So he's going to have to play a lot of right guard to compete for the right guard spot, which gives McCollum the spot at second team center.
Right, but if you have an eye on him, if you have an eye on him potentially being a center, you're going to have to get him snaps with that second team unit at center throughout the process as well too. So what I'm saying is, what is the chances that McCollum, I guess, gets the first
saying just initial
right?
snap.
Then it's probably high. But as this thing progresses on, I don't think we should be too caught up with who's with what team, at least early on in training camp. I think you got to look at the long-term picture here. My long-term picture right now is Brock Hoffman being a backup center for this team.
Fair enough. That's a reasonable, I think, interpretation of it all. All right, Dave, do you want to stop here or do you want to bang out another?
No, I think we got. I mean, look, we got we still got a couple of weeks here, and I think we made some good progress here in the 90 and 30, especially if we're clipping off about 6 at a time here. So let's save the next 6 for the Wednesday show here.
All right, good deal. Anything else, Dave? Any other late breaking news for us to discuss?
Not that I'm seeing. You tell me. You see anything on the Twitter machine here?
I'm looking right now. I am not seeing anything. So no news is good news this time of year. Gonna finish watching the World Cup, or did you kind of tune out once the U.S. got eliminated?
No, I watched both the games the other day, the other over the weekend there, the few games remaining there, and yeah, I'm keeping an eye on that. Obviously, watched the Pirates take care of the Milwaukee Brewers. Boy, did they need that heading into the All-Star break here. It's good to see Skeens get another win. Boy, that Valdez is on fire right now. So I watched a lot of Pirates baseball over the weekend there. I don't know. Are you going to watch the home run derby and all?
No, I'm not a big home run derby guy.
Yeah.
I would have loved to watch the Pirates yesterday, but I don't have Peacock. So
Oh, I did.
Why does the MLB make it where you can't watch your local team? That seems dumb to me, but I did not get to watch it. I was following along and happy to see all the runs. His team go into the break with momentum. So hopefully that continues.
The biggest complaint I have is out here in Vegas is whenever even the Pirates are at home and they play, let's say, Arizona or the Giants or San Diego or the Dodgers or one of these Colorado, one of these West Coast teams, they black it out here on MLB TV. So that's one thing I ain't quite figured out yet. All right, I got one email for you today from Paul
All right.
Brown. Says David Knox, I've been thinking about that tight end debate from the last podcast, and honestly, I'm fully on Team Darnell Washington. While everyone looks at the stats and points to Farmouth, Darnell brings a completely different kind of impact to this offense. He's a lot more well-rounded and is basically a 6 offensive lineman out there who can dominate in the run game. But the real difference is the fear factor. When Darnell has the ball in his hands, he's a massive problem for defenders because they know he's going to run right through them. He's a total mismatch in the red zone, and he brings a physical edge that changes how defenses have to play us. At the end of the day, defenders are actually worried about Darnell when he's making a play, whereas nobody is really losing sleep over Pat Freiermuth. You can really quantify with stats in regards to Darnell's impact, but when you watch the games, you'll see that defenders think twice about trying to tackle Mount Washington. I get everything that you said there, Paul, but remember, this is a guy in Pat Freiermuth with given the opportunity, and look specifically against the Bengals, we've seen his
Mhm.
better games there. If you utilize this guy as part of an offense that obviously now should include better receiving options for Aaron Rodgers, Pat Freiermuth can still register the explosive plays and get yards after the catch for you on top of it. I mean, we've seen over the years that when utilized and the average depth of target and him getting the right number of targets and being able to function against zone defenses and looks like that, Pat Freiermuth can be a very productive player on offense. Now, look, do I expect Pat Freiermuth to catch 70 balls or maybe equal his best season in Pittsburgh to date? Probably not, because of all the things that you did say about Darnell Washington, but Pat Freiermuth for a lot of different reasons other than just being a presence and a hard guy to bring down and just the things that Darnell does well. Don't dismiss the things that Pat Freiermuth can do well, and the fact that if given the opportunity and the right game plan, and depending on how opposing defenses try to handle the Steelers skill position players, Pat Freiermuth is still a guy that can register 10 for 150 and a touchdown or two in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I get the reader's point though. Like, who do you think who's kept up at night more by how am I'm phrasing this poorly? Defensive coordinators are kept up at night more by which guy? Darnell Washington or Pat Freiermuth? And Washington is such a unique guy. I think it is Washington. Although, as you said, the Bengals have always struggled against Freiermuth. They probably talk about him every single time they play.
Right.
The Steelers, we got to stop this guy, and they can't stop this guy. So yeah, I think it's a good way to look at it, just in terms of who kind of strikes more fear in the opponent and their coaching staff is kind of a measure of who is the better player. But Freiermuth just kind of quietly goes about his business, and if Pittsburgh did involve him more in the offense, maybe he would be feared more, because I think Freiermuth can make a lot of plays, and sometimes he's not given the opportunity
Right.
to, which hurts him obviously. So it's close. They obviously, as we talked about, have different skill sets, but I think Washington feels a little more dominant in his role than Freiermuth does in his. So that's why I think I'm with you on giving the edge to Big Darnell.
Okay. Well, I mean, look, I mean, the better pound for pound all around player, as far as all phases of the game. which one probably gives you the more even flow, even kill type performance? Yeah, probably Darnell, because Darnell obviously is one of the better, if not the best, blocking tight end in National Football League right now. But don't don't what I'm getting at is, yes, everything that he said about Darnell is true, but let's not throw Pat Fryermuth out with the bathwater here, because he can change the complexion of games, especially if you start getting them the football to him earlier in games. How many times in the past couple of seasons have we gone, well, Pat Fryermuth, here we are opening up the second half, and Pat Fryermuth has one target or no targets, you
Mhm.
know?
Sure, sure. No, that's a valid point. But I think if you're making me choose, which was the question we posed of choose who is the better player, even though they both have their talents and their value to Pittsburgh, I think it's you can go either way. I think you're not wrong to pick Frymouth for anyone who wants to, but I think Washington would be my choice, citing a similar reason as the reader outline.
I mean, look, I mean, how detrimental to this offense would it be if what is easier to overcome, the loss of a Pat Fryermuth or a loss of a Darnell Washington right now? I mean, obviously because of what Darnell gives you in the run blocking department, and the fact that you can either attach him or detach him from the line of scrimmage makes him that much more effective player, especially what he gives you in the run blocking department. So, yeah, don't hopefully we're not choosing here. We're not seeing the Steelers get in a situation where they're having to overcome either the loss of a Fryermuth or Darnell. But I think most would probably agree, man. You certainly would hate to go numerous amount of games without having Darnell Washington as part of your offense.
Right, and I think that's another way to look at it too. Who would you miss more? And I think you would miss Washington a bit more than you would miss Frymouth.
Right, right. But they're both, look, they're for what they bring this team overall. It's a good collective. It's a good top of the depth chart they have in there. I imagine we'll see both of them on the field. Probably not as much, obviously, as we did under Arthur Smith, but there will be situations where you'll see both those guys on the field together, and it's a good kind of 1-2 punch because of the different areas that both highly excel in.
Sure, this conversation is just peak off-season fodder. I'll
Right.
fully admit that because the Steelers don't care who's the better player. They're both there. They're both paid. They're both under contract for the long haul, and that's all that really matters. It was sort of like the past debates, even last year, a little bit of Warren and Gainwell, but the Warren and Najee Harris debates, like who's the better running back? Oh, who would you rank higher? It's like it doesn't really matter. They're both Steelers, and they're both have their talents, and that's all the Steelers really care about. So this is academic, to be very clear. It's not a slight against either. It's just passing the time, but interesting conversations. Those guys are kind of in similar shoes.
All right. That's all I got for us in the email machine today. Let's see, we've got the live stream tonight starting at 7 o'clock Eastern time. You can find that by going to Alex Kozora's YouTube channel. Be interesting to kind of see the line of questions that we get, being as there hadn't been a lot, if anything, other to talk about with this team since they broke from mandatory minicamp and the final OTA practices here. But whatever we do get, I guess this will technically be the final one until, or no, I suppose we will have one more
Do we?
technically before. Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
2 weeks. It'll be the day before they report, right?
Yeah, although I'm going to the Pirates game on the 27th,
So we might not
so
have
we
them.
may not do one. We may do one next week. I don't know, but
All right.
we'll figure it out.
All right, we'll leave you with this until either tonight or on Wednesday. You can follow me on Twitter/X at Steelers Depot. You can follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way to get a username and password and get a ad-free version of the site. And once again, we will be back together tonight, 7 o'clock on Alex Kozora's YouTube channel for the live
Oh,
stream.
by the way, can I get your
Oh.
quick thoughts on the fights this week? The McGregor fight. Do you ever see anything like that before? Was such a high profile name, an injury happening so early into a fight?
I mean, I have seen. I mean, I've seen some, obviously over the years, seen some fights get ended early because of guys have to unable to continue. It was just very unfortunate because I think that could have been at least a very entertaining first round of that fight. I thought overall the card was pretty good, and obviously the last two fights didn't go all that long there. But personally, I think I know Max came out and says, yeah, let's do this again. I'm overseeing those two. I think McGregor might be done now because he had to come back from that leg injury. Took about 5 years for that to happen. How long is this injury? He's very entertaining and the build up and gives you your money's worth when it comes to that. I don't see the value with him leading a card moving forward here. But
do you think he was hurt before the fight, or do you think he actually got hurt on that first kick?
I see a lot of people trying to point to the weigh-in and the misstep and all like that. I believe McGregor saying that none of that mattered, that he was healthy going into that. It happened on that first kick plant there. And I think that was the end of that, obviously.
Yeah. All right. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to get your
thoughts. The good news is all that's on Peacock now. I mean, on Paramount now. So if you have a Paramount subscription, it's not like you spent $70 for a fight that the main card was over before it even got started there. So
all right.
Anyway.
Dave.
All right, let's see. Once again, we'll be back on Wednesday or later tonight, depending on your choice there. So as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.